If you like fidget spinners, and why not, you're going to love this. This is the knife sort of equivalent. There's a lot to fiddle with on this thing. There's the method of putting it onto a belt, which you open up one at a time, and then you can then clip it onto a belt. That's a big, tough way of looking at it. It's also compatible with the American military webbing set. There's two straps to keep it in place, one there and one there, although that actually does a pretty good job. That little ramp in there does a pretty good job of keeping it into place without the need for the straps. There's a utility pouch, which again comes off. There's a piece of paracord that I put on, which we'll see the use for that later. And underneath this bit there's actually a sharpening stone as well. So all in all, there's quite a lot you get for this. Quite a lot of knife you get for your money as well. So why is it a replica M9 bayonet? Well, there's a guy called Charles Finn who designed this based on the back of one of the fairly dreadful Kalashnikov bayonets in around 1986. And 5 companies were set up, or 5 companies eventually got the contracts to make these things. And the trademark rather, now sits with the US military. So you can't call it an M9 bayonet because it isn't. It's not bayed by the right people, and certainly Ravenforge haven't decided to go to ask the American Army if they can have a patent for it. But it's a fair old size, this thing. There's a lot, you do get a lot of knife. This was about £40. I think the originals tend to be, genuine ones are into the hundreds now. Ambidextrous sheath as well. Generally really well designed. Obviously the bayonet rifle barrel goes through there and it clips on. Oh, sorry, something else I forgot. Something else you can fiddle with as well. And the handle comes off quite easily. Can lift it off. So there, round tang. Whole thing comes apart. That's fairly tough. So I wouldn't have too many worries about the strength of the handle, although see here, I'm not entirely sure how it's all held together. It screws into place. That's how. I haven't done that before. So yeah, that might be a bit of a weak point really. Depends on how you feel about these sort of style of handles. And it goes back into there, making sure that's the right way up. Screw it back into place. And that sits quite nice and firmly all together there. So the knife itself is a fair old size. Overall, something like 31 centimetres or just over 12, just shade over a foot. So you're getting a fair amount of knife. Overall, the weight of this thing is impressive. The total is just under 3/4 of a kilogram, which is about 1.6 pounds. And the knife weighs just over half a kilogram, which is, again, I think about a pound. So you're getting a fair amount of knife for your money again. The blade is half a centimetre, that's not half a centimetre, is it 5mm thick, sorry. Which is, is good enough. You get a nice saw edge on there that actually slightly extends over to that edge as well. There is a screwdriver attachment on the end of the bayonet, the end of the scabbard, although that's going to be a fairly big old screwdriver and you a slot to get in there, and you're going to need a fair amount of torque to open anything like that. And there is a wire cutter, sits in there, and you can then, I think it's actually supposed to be the way up. That way, sorry. Trying to do it ambidextrous way. Wire in there, ka-chunk, that cuts it, barbed wire and stuff like that. So all in all, you actually get a fair amount for your knife. Something like 400,000 of these have been made. It sits on inevitably the M4, M16 platform. standard rifle of the American military, of course. There's just, yeah, you can use that pommel as a reasonable hammer. It doesn't. It's reasonably effective. This, yeah, is the Raven Forge version. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of other people making replicas of these knives, and overall it's actually not a bad knife. I did find it a little bit cumbersome to use, partly because this completely round handle, and also this very large ring there does, I mean, it gives you really, you know, your hand's not going to slip over anything, but it isn't the most comfortable knife I've ever used. Let's see how well it and I can cut bottles. What about the wire cutter? I haven't got any wire, I've got a coat hanger. Not quite as impressive. Problem with this is it lifts too far away, and it doesn't help that when we try and do that, the whole thing moves out. So that's not hugely impressive, but this is quite tough wire. Yeah, you see the problem there. And it should be noted that that stud also moves around a bit. So how well does the saw work? Well, it's slow, but it does work. One thing I was wondering is how good a spear it would make. I've not seen many other people think of this. I'm not hugely impressed with the use of spears, but let's have a go, see what it can do. Right, I'm sure if I prepared that a bit better, that might have actually worked a bit better. Perhaps a bit more corded along it. So all in all, it's not a bad blade for the money, £40. The steel, I don't know what it is. Raven Forge don't actually say what steel it is. I guess it's probably 420, 440, something like that. They do seem to like 420 as a steel. You get a lot of tools, you get a lot of knife for your money, you get a lot of things you can fiddle with. And something that I still think is a really good idea is an integral sharpening stone. I mean, that is a little bit coarse, but it's going to work. So perhaps if you're looking at a survival knife, something just a little bit different, perhaps you could consider getting yourselves one of these. Or if you just want a military knife, which I'm generally not that keen on military knives, a military knife that actually is usable, works, and just look at it. I mean, it's built like a tank. Look at the overall size of it. Anyway, couple of marks off for the wire cutter, but again, really how much use that's going to be anyway in a civilian survival knife. Does look good though. And it's a useful little feature, I suppose, if it worked. And I have tried, yes, twisting it a bit more, and no, it still doesn't work. But, so I lose a couple of points for that. Overall, that's a bit of damage from using it as a spear. This is quite a coarse stippling on here, but again, it works. Overall, not a bad blade.